Tay stood outside the door of his new room and checked the number 3 times. Room 7-42. This was the place. He took a deep breath, pressed his hand against the scanner, and watched the door slide open with a soft hiss. He had expected an empty room. He had expected silence. He had expected to finally have a quiet place to study, eat instant noodles, and maybe sleep for more than 4 hours a night. What he found instead was a 7-foot-tall alien standing in the exact center of the room, completely still, like a statue made of pale blue glass. Tay froze in the doorway. His bag slipped from his shoulder and hit the floor with a loud thump. The alien turned her head slowly. Her eyes were large and silver, without any visible pupils. Her skin looked like crystal, smooth and faintly glowing from within. She wore a simple gray uniform, and her possessions were arranged on her side of the room in perfect geometric patterns. Every item was placed at exact angles. Every surface was clean. Tay looked at his own side of the room. It was already messy, and he had only been standing there for 10 seconds. "Hello," he said, because he did not know what else to say. "I am Tay. I guess we are roommates." The alien stared at him. She did not blink. Tay was not sure if she could blink. "I am Velis," she said. Her voice was strange, like wind passing through hollow tubes. "I was not informed that my roommate would be human. I was not informed that my roommate would be—" "Not human," Tay replied. He tried to smile. "But that is okay. I am sure we can make this work." He bent down to pick up his bag, then straightened up and walked toward her with his hand extended. On Earth, this was polite. On Earth, this was how people greeted each other. But they were not on Earth. Velis took 3 rapid steps backward. Her crystalline skin flickered with a harsh red light, and she made a sound like breaking glass. Tay stopped immediately, his hand still hanging in the air. "Do not touch me," Velis said. Her voice was cold and sharp. "Among my people, uninvited physical contact is an act of aggression. You have threatened me." "What?" "No, I was just trying to shake your hand. It is a greeting. Humans do it all the time. I am not human," I noticed. They stood there in awkward silence. Tay slowly lowered his hand. Velis continued to glow red. The room felt very small. Tay did the only thing he could think of. He pulled out his communicator and called Una. Una arrived 12 minutes later, slightly out of breath. She was a xenobiology researcher who worked 3 floors below, and she had known Tay since they were children back on Earth. She was also the only person Tay trusted to fix the mess he had just created. "You tried to shake her hand?" Una asked, staring at him. "I did not know." "Tay, there was a cultural briefing. A 3-hour cultural briefing. Did you attend?" "I was tired." Una closed her eyes and took a long breath. Then she turned to Velis, who had moved to the far corner of the room and was still glowing faintly red. "I apologize for my friend," Una said in a calm and respectful voice. "He meant no offense. Among humans, extending a hand is a sign of friendship and peace. He was trying to welcome you." Velis was quiet for a moment. The red glow slowly faded back to pale blue. "Your species has strange customs," she said finally. "We know," Una replied. "We are working on it." Over the next hour, Una explained human behavior to Velis, and Corathon behavior to Tay. "Corathons," she said, "were a species that valued order, silence, and emotional control above all else. They did not touch each other casually. They did not raise their voices. They did not express emotions openly, because doing so was considered primitive and dangerous. More importantly, Corathons were touch telepaths. If a Corathan touched another being, they would feel that being's emotions directly, as if those emotions were their own. For a species that prized control, this was overwhelming. It was painful. It was something to be avoided at all costs. Tay listened carefully. He felt bad for scaring Velis. He had not meant to threaten her. He had just wanted to be friendly. "I am sorry," he said to Velis when Una finished explaining. "I did not understand. I will be more careful." Velis looked at him with her silver eyes. Her expression did not change. "Your apology is noted," she said. "I will attempt to tolerate your presence," was not exactly a warm response. But Tay decided to take it as progress. The first week was difficult. Velis had many rules. She required absolute silence between 0200 and 0600 hours.
Right.
Because that was when she entered a meditative state that was essential for her health. She did not eat organic matter in shared spaces because the smell disturbed her. She found human emotional leakage distressing. Though Tay was not entirely sure what that meant, Tay tried his best to follow her rules. He wore headphones when he listened to music. He ate his instant noodles quickly and quietly. He tried not to feel too many emotions, though this was harder than it sounded. One evening, he made a cup of noodles and forgot that Velis was in the room. He turned around and found her standing right behind him, staring at the steaming cup in his hands. "What is that?" she asked. "Instant noodles," Tay said. "Do you want to try some?" Velis leaned closer. Steam rose from the cup and touched her crystalline face. She pulled back immediately. "It's thermally aggressive," she declared. Tay blinked. "It is just hot." "That is what I said. Thermally aggressive." Tay could not help it. He laughed. It was a small laugh, barely more than a breath, but it escaped before he could stop it. Velis stared at him. "Why are you making that sound?" "I am laughing. It means I find something funny." "What is funny about thermal aggression?" "Nothing. Everything. I do not know." Tay shook his head. "Never mind. I am sorry." Velis continued to stare at him for a long moment. Then she turned and walked back to her side of the room without another word. By the end of the first week, it established an uneasy truce. Tay stayed on his side. Velis stayed on hers. They did not speak unless necessary. They did not look at each other unless required. But sometimes, late at night, when Tay was lying in bed and staring at the ceiling, you would see the soft glow of Velis's skin reflected on the walls. She never seemed to sleep. She just stood by the window, perfectly still, staring out at the stars. Tay wondered what she was looking at. He wondered what she was thinking. He wondered if she was as lonely as he was, stuck on this station far from home, surrounded by strangers who did not understand her. He wanted to ask, but he knew she would not answer. So he closed his eyes and tried to sleep, and the soft blue glow continued to pulse in the darkness like a quiet, distant heartbeat. Weeks passed on Station Helix 9. And Tay slowly learned to live with his strange roommate. He learned that Elise's crystalline skin changed color depending on her mood, though she would never admit it. When she was calm, she glowed soft blue. When she was annoyed, the blue became darker, almost purple. When she was stressed, her light flickered like a candle in the wind. He learned that she stood by the observation window every evening at exactly the same time, 1900 hours, and stared at a distant star cluster in the far corner of the galaxy. He did not know why. He did not ask. But he learned that she never ate in front of him, never drank in front of him, never did anything that might be considered vulnerable or weak. She was always controlled, always composed, always alone in her own way, even when they were in the same room. One night Tay could not sleep. His mind was too full of thoughts about his exams, about his family back on Earth, about the strange path his life had taken to bring him to this metal station floating in the middle of nowhere. He got out of bed and walked to the common area. He expected to find it empty. Instead, he found Liz. She was standing by the window again, but something was different. Her glow was dimmer than usual, almost gray. Her shoulders were slightly bent, as if she was carrying something heavy that no one else could see. Tay hesitated. The old Tay, the Tay from the first week, would have turned around and gone back to bed. But something made him stay. He sat down on the floor near the window, far enough away that Velis would not feel threatened. Then he started to talk. He talked about Earth. He talked about the mountains in his hometown, how they turned gold and red in autumn. He talked about his grandmother, who made the best soup in the world and always told him to eat more. He talked about the sound of rain on rooftops, and the smell of the sea, and the feeling of grass under bare feet. Velis did not respond. She did not turn around. She did not acknowledge him at all. But she did not leave either. when Tay finally ran out of words. He stood up quietly and went back to bed. The next morning, neither of them mentioned it. They went about their day as if nothing had happened. But that night, Tay found himself in the common area again. And Velis was there again. And he talked again about different things this time. About his fears, about his dreams, about the loneliness that sometimes sat in his chest like a stone. This became their unspoken ritual. Every night, Tay would talk. Every night, Velis would listen. And every morning, they would pretend it never happened. Una noticed the change before Tay did. "You seem different," she said one afternoon, sitting across from him in the station cafeteria. "Less stressed. Did something happen with your roommate?" Tay shrugged. "We have an understanding now, I think." "An understanding. I talk. She listens. We do not discuss it." Una raised an eyebrow. "That sounds very Corathan of you." "Maybe she is rubbing off on me." Una laughed, but then her expression became more serious. "Be careful, Tay. Corathans are not like us. They feel things differently. They process things differently. What seems like friendship to you might mean something else entirely to her." Tay nodded, but he did not really understand what she meant. Not yet. A few days later, Una told him something that changed the way he saw Velis. "Corathans are touch telepaths," she said. "You know that already? But do you understand what that really means? It means they can feel emotions through touch. It means they can feel everything through touch. Every emotion, every memory, every thought that is connected to those emotions. When a Corathan touches another being, they experience that being's inner world as if it were their own. For a species that values control and order, this is terrifying. It is like drowning in someone else's mind." Tay was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Velis, standing alone by the window every night. He thought about her refusal to touch anyone, to connect with anyone, to let anyone in. "That sounds lonely," he said finally. "It is," Una agreed. "But to them, loneliness is safer than the alternative." Tay felt something twist in his chest. He did not have a word for it. It was not quite sadness. It was not quite pity. It was something closer to understanding, mixed with a strange kind of ache. That night, when he sat in the common area and talked, his words felt different, heavier, more careful. He talked about connection, about the human need to touch and be touched, to know and be known. He talked about how humans could not survive without each other, how loneliness could kill them just as surely as any disease. Velis did not respond, but her glow changed just slightly. It became warmer, softer, almost golden. 2 weeks later, the station announced a cultural exchange event. Every species on Helix 9 was invited to share something from their home world. Whether it was art, music, food, or tradition, Tay did not plan to participate. He was just an engineering student. He did not have any special talents or impressive skills. But Una convinced him to sign up anyway. "Just sing something," she said. "You have a nice voice. You used to sing all the time back home." "That was different. That was just for fun. So have fun." What is the worst that could happen? Tay thought about it. The worst that could happen was that he would embarrass himself in front of hundreds of aliens who already thought humans were strange and primitive. But Una was looking at him with that expression she always used when she wanted him to do something. The one that said she would not let it go until he agreed. "Fine," he said. "One song. That is all." The night of the event, Tay stood on a small stage in the station's main hall. The room was filled with beings from dozens of different worlds. Some had scales. Some had wings. Some had bodies made of light or shadow or things. Tay could not even name. He was terrified, but then he opened his mouth and started to sing. It was an old Korean folk song, something his grandmother used to sing to him when he was small. The words were simple. The melody was sad and sweet. It spoke of mountains and rivers, of love and loss, of home. As he sang, the room went quiet. Beings who had been talking fell silent. Beings who had been moving stood still. The song filled the space like water filling a glass. Slow and gentle and complete. When Tay finished, there was a moment of perfect silence. Then the room erupted in sounds that might have been applause. Though every species expressed it differently, Tay bowed and stepped off the stage, his heart pounding. He did not think he had done anything special. He had just sung a song, but then he looked toward the back of the room, and he saw Velis. She was standing perfectly still, as always, but her crystalline skin was shimmering with colors he had never seen before. Gold, white, a deep, glowing blue that pulsed like a heartbeat. Later that night, Velis found him in their quarters. She stood in the doorway for a long moment before speaking.
"Your music," she said.
It was inefficient. The tonal patterns served no practical function. The emotional content was excessive and unnecessary. Tay felt his heart sink. "Oh, I am sorry you did not enjoy it." Velis was quiet. Then she added in a voice so soft, Tay almost missed it. "It was not entirely unpleasant." He stared at her. Then slowly, a smile spread across his face. "Thank you," he said. "That means a lot." Velis turned and walked to her side of the room without another word. But as she passed the window, Tay could have sworn her glow was warmer than before. It was a small thing, a tiny moment, but somehow it felt like the beginning of something neither of them could name. The alarm woke Tay from a deep sleep. It was not the soft chime of a schedule reminder, or the gentle pulse of a message notification. It was a harsh, screaming sound that cut through the air like a knife. Red lights flashed across the ceiling. The walls themselves seemed to vibrate with urgency. Tay threw himself out of bed and looked around. Velis's side of the room was empty. Her belongings were still arranged in their perfect patterns. But she was not there. A voice came through the station's speakers, calm but firm. "Attention, all residents. There has been a reactor malfunction in sectors 4 through 7. Radiation leak detected. All personnel must evacuate to designated safe zones immediately. Repeat, all personnel must evacuate immediately." Tay's blood went cold. Sectors 4 through 7. That was the lower part of the station. That was where the research labs were. That was where Velis worked. He grabbed his communicator and tried to call her. No answer. He tried again. Nothing. The signal was dead, probably blocked by the radiation or the emergency protocols. He pulled on his clothes and ran out of the room. The corridors were chaos. Beings of every species pushed past each other, moving toward the safe zones. Some were calm. Some were panicking. A small creature with fur like silver grass was crying in the corner, calling for someone who was not there. Tay pushed through the crowd, moving against the flow. Everyone was going up. He was going down. His communicator buzzed. It was Tay. "Where are you?" "The evacuation is mandatory. You need to get to Safe Zone 3 right now. Velis is in the lower sectors." There was a pause. When Una spoke again, her voice was shaking. "Tay? No. The radiation down there is lethal to Corthans. Their crystalline biology cannot handle it. If she is exposed, she will die within hours. Then I need to find her. Tay, listen to me. Humans can survive that radiation for a short time, but it will still hurt you. It will burn you. You could suffer permanent damage. The containment teams are already on their way. Let them handle it. How long until they reach Sector 6? Another pause. 40 minutes. Maybe more. 40 minutes. Velis did not have 40 minutes. I am going, Tay said. Please, do not do this. But Tay had already ended the call. He reached the access point to the lower sectors and found it sealed. A warning sign flashed on the door, telling him that the area beyond was contaminated. That entry was forbidden, that death was likely. Tay placed his hand on the emergency override panel. The system asked him to confirm his choice. He confirmed, the door slid open, and a wave of heat hit him in the face. The corridor beyond was dark, lit only by emergency lights that flickered and sparked. The air tasted wrong, like metal and fire. Tay's skin began to tingle almost immediately. A warning sign that the radiation was already affecting him. He ran anyway. The lower sectors were a maze of corridors and rooms, all of them designed for research and experimentation. Tay had never been down here before. He did not know the layout. He did not know where Valise's lab was. He called her name. His voice echoed off the walls, but there was no response. The tingling on his skin became a burn. His eyes started to water. Every breath felt like swallowing glass. But he kept running, kept searching, kept calling. He found her in a corridor near the main research bay. She was on the floor, collapsed against the wall. Her crystalline skin was cracked, deep fissures running across her arms and face like broken ice. Her glow was almost gone, just a faint flicker of gray light that pulsed weakly with each breath. Tay dropped to his knees beside her. Velis, can you hear me?" Her silver eyes opened slowly. They were dim, clouded. She looked at him without recognition. "Human," she whispered. Her voice was like wind through dead leaves. "You should not be here. The radiation will kill you. Will kill you faster," Tay said. "Can you walk?" She tried to move and failed. Her body was too damaged. The radiation had already done too much harm. Tay did not hesitate. He slid his arms under her body and lifted her off the ground. She was lighter than he expected, almost fragile in his arms. Her cracked skin pressed against his chest, cold and sharp. "Do not," she said weakly. "You will feel everything. You will feel me." Tay understood what she meant. It touched telepathy. By holding her, she would feel every emotion in his heart, every thought in his mind. She would experience his inner world as if it were her own. "I know," he said. "It is okay." He started to walk. The corridor seemed longer than before. The heat was worse. Tay's skin was blistering now, turning red and raw. His lungs burned with every breath. His vision blurred at the edges, but he kept walking. He reached a sealed door and found it locked. Emergency protocol. The system wanted to contain the radiation, to prevent it from spreading. It did not care that there were people trapped inside. Tay put Velis down gently and slammed his hand against the door's emergency panel. It did not open. He tried again. Still nothing. He looked around and found a metal pipe lying on the ground, probably knocked loose by the explosion. He picked it up and swung it at the panel as hard as he could. Once, twice, 3 times the panel sparked and cracked. The door shuddered and slid open a few inches. Tay dropped the pipe and forced his fingers into the gap, pulling with all his strength. His hands were bleeding now. The metal cut into his palms, tore at his skin. But he did not stop. He could not stop. The door opened enough for him to squeeze through. He picked Velis up again and carried her through the gap into the next corridor. This one was clearer. The radiation levels were lower here. Tay could see the signs pointing toward the medical bay. He was so tired. His arms ached. His legs felt like they were made of stone. Every step was a battle against his own body, which was screaming at him to stop, to rest, to give up. But he looked down at Velis, at her broken skin and fading light, and he found the strength to keep going. The medical bay doors appeared in front of him like a miracle. Tay stumbled toward them, his vision swimming, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The doors opened automatically. Bright lights flooded his eyes. He heard voices shouting, but the words did not make sense anymore. Everything was blurry. Everything was fading. He managed 2 more steps before his legs gave out. He fell. But he made sure to fall forward, to land on his side so that Velis would not be crushed beneath him. Her body rolled gently onto the floor beside him, her cracked face turned toward his. Her eyes were open. She was looking at him, and in that moment, despite the pain and the exhaustion and the darkness creeping at the edges of his mind, Tay smiled. "You are safe now," he whispered. Then the darkness took him, and he knew nothing more when the doctors finally reached them. They found 2 bodies lying side by side on the floor of the medical bay. One human, one Karathan, both broken. Both barely alive, but alive. They separated them and began treatment. The human had severe radiation burns, nerve damage in his hands, and multiple lacerations. The Karathan had cellular decay in over 40% of her body, with cracks in her crystalline structure that would leave permanent scars. Both should have died. Neither did. Later, the doctors would call it a miracle. They would say that the human's resilience had been extraordinary. That no other species could have survived that level of exposure while carrying another being through a contaminated zone. But Tay did not hear any of that. He was unconscious, lost in dreams of mountains and rain and a soft blue light that pulsed in the darkness like a heartbeat. And somewhere nearby, in a room filled with medical machines and quiet beeping sounds, Velis lay with her eyes closed, feeling the echoes of something she had never felt before. Warmth. So much warmth. Like carrying a sun inside her chest, she did not understand it. She did not know what to do with it. But she knew, with a certainty that went beyond logic, that she would never forget it. Tay woke to the sound of machines' soft beeps, gentle hums, the quiet rhythm of medical equipment doing its work. He opened his eyes slowly, blinking against the bright lights of the recovery room. Una was sitting beside his bed. Her eyes were red, her face tired. She looked like she had not slept in days. When she saw him open his eyes, she let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for a very long time. "You idiot," she said. Her voice cracked. "You complete and total idiot." Tay tried to smile. His face hurt. Everything hurt. "Good morning to you, too." Una wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "You have been unconscious for 3 days. 3 days, Tay. Do you have any idea what I have been going through? Do you have any idea how close you came to dying? I had a good reason, yet a stupid reason. You ran into a radiation zone to save someone who probably would not have done the same for you. You could have died. You almost did die." Tay was quiet for a moment. His hands were wrapped in bandages. He could barely feel his fingers. The doctors had told him before he lost consciousness completely that there might be permanent nerve damage. He might never have full use of his hands again. He should have been upset about that. He should have been angry or scared or regretful. But all he could think about was Velis, lying broken on the corridor floor, her light fading away. "How is she?" he asked. Una's expression softened. She looked away, out the window at the stars beyond. "She is alive. The doctors say she will recover, mostly. The cracks in her skin will scar. She will never look the same as before, but she will live." Tay felt something loosen in his chest. Relief. Deep, overwhelming relief. "Has she said anything?" Una shook her head. "She has not spoken to anyone since she woke up. She just sits on the observation deck and stares at the stars. She will not eat. She will not rest. She just sits there." Tay understood. He did not know how, but he understood. It took another week before Tay was allowed to leave the medical bay. His burns had healed mostly. His hands were still wrapped, still damaged. But he could walk and talk and pretend that he was fine. He went to the observation deck. Velis was exactly where Una said she would be. She stood in front of the great window, her back to the door, her crystalline form outlined against the endless black of space. Her skin was different now. The smooth, perfect surface was gone, replaced by jagged lines where the cracks had healed. They looked like scars, like rivers carved into stone by ancient water. Her glow was dimmer than before, softer. She did not turn when Tay approached. He stopped a few feet behind her and waited. The silence stretched between them like a bridge made of glass, beautiful and fragile. Finally, Velis spoke. "You touched me." Her voice was quiet, different. There was something in it that had not been there before. Something raw and uncertain. "I had to carry you," Tay said. "There was no other way." "You touched me," she repeated, as if he had not spoken. "I felt everything." Tay's heart beat faster. He knew what she meant. Touch telepathy. When he had carried her through those burning corridors, she had experienced his emotions as if they were her own. She had felt everything he was feeling. He did not know what to say. He did not know what she had felt. "What did you feel?" he asked carefully. Velis was silent for a long moment. Her glow flickered, shifting through colors Tay had never seen before. Gold. White. A deep, aching blue. "Fear," she said finally, "but not for yourself. For me, you were terrified that I would die." You were terrified that you would not reach me in time. You were terrified that you would fail." She paused. Her voice trembled slightly. "And warmth. So much warmth. I did not know that beings could contain such warmth. It was like standing inside a star. It was overwhelming. It was painful. It was the most beautiful thing I have ever felt." Tay did not know what to say. He had not realized that his emotions were so intense, so visible. He had just been trying to save her. He had just been doing what felt right. "Your people," Velis continued, still not turning around, "carry entire suns inside you. I felt it. I felt the way you love, the way you hope, the way you fear. It is so bright, so loud. How do you survive it? How do you not burn from the inside out?" Tay thought about her question. He thought about his grandmother, who had loved him so fiercely that it had felt like armor against the world. He thought about Yuna, who had been his friend since childhood, who would walk into fire for him just as he had walked into radiation for Velis. He thought about every person who had ever touched his life and left a mark on his heart. "We do not always survive," he said softly. "Sometimes we burn. Sometimes the love is too much, or the loss is too deep, and we break. But we learn to share the heat. We give pieces of our warmth to others, and they give pieces back to us. That is how we keep going. We burn together." Velis finally turned to face him. Tay saw that her eyes were glistening. He had never seen a Korathan cry before. He had not known they could cry. But there they were, tears like liquid silver running down her scarred crystalline face. "My people call this the forever moment," she whispered. "When two souls see each other without barriers, without protection, without walls, we spend our entire lives avoiding it. We are taught from birth that it is dangerous, that it will destroy us, that we must never let anyone see what is truly inside us." She stepped closer. Her glow intensified, pulsing with colors that seemed to come from somewhere deep within her. "But you did not hesitate. When you touched me, you did not hide anything. You let me see everything. Every fear, every hope, every broken piece, and every beautiful piece. You were not afraid." "I did not have time to be afraid," Tay admitted. "No," Velis shook her head slowly. "It was not about time. It was about who you are. Your people do not hide. You cannot hide. Your hearts are too big, too bright. You spill out of yourselves constantly, touching everyone around you." She reached out with one hand, her fingers hovering inches from his face. Tay could feel the faint warmth of her glow, like standing near a gentle flame. "I have spent my whole life avoiding this moment," she said. "I was taught that connection was weakness, that vulnerability was death, that to let another being see the truth of you was to lose yourself." Her fingers touched his cheek. The sensation was strange, cool, and smooth, like touching polished stone warmed by the sun. And then Tay felt it, a rush of emotion that was not his own. Gratitude so deep it ached. Confusion, tangled and uncertain. Fear, old and familiar. And underneath it all, something new, something tentative and fragile, like a seed pushing through frozen ground toward the light. "But you taught me something different," Velis said. "You taught me that connection is not weakness. It is strength. It is what allows your people to survive things that should destroy you. It is what makes you walk into fire for strangers. It is what makes you carry others through darkness when you can barely carry yourselves." She lowered her hand. The connection faded, but the echo of her emotions remained in Tay's chest, warm and strange and wonderful. "I do not understand humans," Velis said. "I do not think I ever will. But I understand you now, Tay. I have seen what is inside you, and I will remember it forever." Tay smiled. It was a small smile, gentle and tired, but real. "And I will remember the alien who thought my noodles were thermally aggressive," Velis made a sound. It took Tay a moment to realize what it was. She was laughing. It was a strange sound. It's like wind through crystal chimes, but it was unmistakably laughter. And in that moment, standing together on the observation deck with the stars spread out before them, like an infinite sea of light, Tay realized that something had changed between them. They were no longer just roommates. They were no longer just two strangers from different worlds trying to tolerate each other. They were something else now. Something that did not have a name in either of their languages, but whatever it was good. It was warm. And it was forever. 1 year passed on Station Helix-9. The damage from the reactor accident had been repaired. The corridors were clean again. The research labs were back to full operation. Life continued, as it always did. Moving forward through the darkness of space, toward some unknown destination, Tay stood in the quarters he had shared with Velis for nearly 2 years. His bags were packed. His shuttle departed in 3 hours. He was going home. The room looked different now than it had on that first day. Velis's side was still organized, still geometric, but there were changes. A small plant from Earth's botanical collection sat on her desk. A gift from Tay that she had initially called biologically unnecessary, but now watered every day without fail. A photograph of mountains hung on her wall, because she had once admitted that she found the irregular shapes strangely pleasing, and on the invisible line that had once divided their spaces. There was now a small table with 2 chairs, where they had spent countless evenings talking, sharing, learning each other's worlds. Velis stood by the door, her posture rigid as always. But her glow was warm, a soft gold that Tay had learned meant contentment. The scars on her crystalline skin had become familiar, almost beautiful in their own way. They told a story of survival, of change, of something broken, becoming something new. "You have everything?" she asked. Tay looked around the room one last time. "I think so. Not much to bring. Most of my important things are not the kind you can pack." Velis tilted her head slightly. It was a human gesture she had picked up without realizing it. That is an inefficient statement. Important things should be organized and transportable. Some things are too big to carry. You have to leave them where they belong and trust they will still be there when you come back. Velis was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I have learned much from humans in this year. I have learned that you say things that sound simple, but mean something complicated. I have learned that your logic is often strange, but usually has a deeper purpose. I have learned that instant noodles, while thermally aggressive, are acceptable when consumed during late-night conversations about the meaning of existence." Tay laughed. It felt good to laugh. It had taken months for Velis to understand humor, and even longer for her to attempt it herself. But she had learned. She had grown. They both had. "You could come with me," Tay said. He had asked before. He knew the answer. But he asked anyway, because hope was another human thing he could not seem to let go of. Earth is not so bad. The gravity's heavier, and the weather is unpredictable, and there are too many people. But you might like it. You might find it strangely pleasing. Velis shook her head. "My work is here. My people need researchers who understand humans now. After the accident, after the reports of what you did, there has been much interest. Corathons want to know how a species so chaotic and emotional can also be so brave and selfless. I am uniquely qualified to explain, because you lived with one. Because one saved my life?" Velis paused. Her glow shifted, deepening to that aching blue that Tay had come to recognize as something close to sadness. "Because one showed me that there is more than one way to exist. More than one way to be strong?" They stood in silence for a moment. The station hummed around them, a constant background sound that Tay had stopped noticing long ago, but would probably miss once he was gone. "I have something for you," Velis said. She reached into a small compartment on her uniform and pulled out a crystal. It was small, no bigger than Tay's thumbnail, and it glowed with a soft inner light that pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. "This is a memory crystal," she explained. "Among my people, we use them to store important moments. When I hold this crystal in focus, I can imprint my thoughts and feelings onto it. Anyone who touches it afterward will experience a fragment of what I experienced." She held it out to him. "I have stored a moment in this crystal. The moment when you carried me through the fire. The moment when I felt your heart for the first time. It is the most precious memory I have. I want you to have it." Tay stared at the crystal. His throat felt tight. "Velis, I cannot take this. It is too important. That is why I am giving it to you." Her voice was firm but gentle. I do not need the crystal to remember. The memory is part of me now. It changed who I am. But you should have proof that it happened. You should have something to hold when the distance feels too great and the stars seem too cold. It was warm in his palm, warmer than he expected. He could feel something inside it, a faint echo of emotion that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his own heartbeat. Thank you, he said. The words felt too small, but they were all he had. Velis nodded. Then she did something she had only done once before. On that night on the observation deck, when everything between them had changed, she stepped forward and embraced him. Her crystalline arms wrapped around him. Cool and smooth, and Tay felt the familiar rush of borrowed emotion. But this time, it was different. This time he felt not just gratitude or confusion or fear, he felt love. It was not the same as human love. It was quieter, steadier, like a river flowing deep underground. But it was real. It was powerful. And it was his now, a gift she had chosen to give him. I will remember this, Velis said softly, her voice muffled against his shoulder. When I am old and my light is fading, I will remember the human who carried fire in his heart. I will tell my descendants about you, about your people, about how you taught me that vulnerability is not weakness and connection is not destruction. Tay held her tightly. He could feel tears on his face, but he did not care. And I will remember the alien who thought my food was aggressive and my emotions were too loud. I will tell everyone I meet about the Corathon, who learned to laugh, who learned to hope, who became the best friend I have ever had. They stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other in the silence of the room they had shared. In the space between two worlds that had somehow become a home, finally Velis pulled back. Her eyes were glistening again, silver tears tracing paths down her scarred face. "No," she said. "Your shuttle will not wait." Tay nodded. He picked up his bags. He walked to the door, then he stopped and looked back one last time. "This is not goodbye," he said. "The galaxy is big, but it is not infinite. We will find each other again." Velis smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was there. That is a very human thing to believe. That the universe will bend itself to accommodate your desires.